Hello, guys. Stand by for a quick intro. Welcome back to another episode of the Strongman Winner Circle podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Canby, and this is episode 75 with the newly married Shane Reece of MST Systems. MST Systems offered a periodization course, one-on-one coaching, and much, much more. He's the coach to many of your favorite strongman and strongwoman, and was also a competitor himself back in the day, winning World's Strongest Man 90 kilo. So we're going to sit down with Shane, we're going to pick his brain to figure out why he's so smart and what he's doing right with all these athletes on today's episode of the Strongman Winner Circle podcast with Shane Reece of MST Systems. This podcast is sponsored by TsunamiSports.com, and if you're interested in supporting the show and member-exclusive videos, consider joining the Can Be Do channel. Without further ado, here is Mr. Shane. Shane, how are you, mate?
I'm good, buddy. That was a very nice introduction. I enjoyed that.
Oh, I do my best to highlight my guests, and my only caveat or my only complaint is I need more pictures of you. I had to go through your Instagram and steal a bunch of footage, but I was able to put it together. But we need some more pictures.
I'm one of these people that I delete my phone gallery a lot. I know some people just leave it as like thousands of things, but I delete my phone gallery all the time. I got a weird habit about it. So that's why I asked Shannon to get some. But she just has pictures of herself. So, yeah, there wasn't too many.
All right. Well, of course, you want to save space, but again, there's always good memories to have. But I wanted to start off the show talking about our buddy Joey Schofield a little bit. I had him on the show last week, and it was interesting because he gets to interview all the best strongmen for Giants Live. And I asked him, like, what kind of tidbits do you learn from these guys? Like, you must find some like really interesting facts, like on and off the screen. And he says, and then I asked, and I followed up, like what tidbits have you learned and you've brought into your own training? He goes, nothing really. I was like, anything I really do is I just follow Shane. So what are you telling Joey that is so important that he ignores what the top strongmen are doing?
I don't know. Just Joe's one of these where he, because he's known me so long, he'll think of questions for like weeks, and then he'll come over with this extremely complex question and ask me, and I'll just my answers are always my opinion. That because the thing with strength and conditioning is, as you know, there's so many roads that lead to Rome. There's no set in stone definitive answer. There's always other ways of doing stuff. So I'll give my answer, and then he'll sometimes say he's asked other people this, and you know they basically avoided the question or this or that or whatever. And then he's basically said that the longer he spent with people, he tends to ask more. He kind of likes learning off coaches more, because I think sometimes athletes, they get, if something works for them, they'd be like, this is the way, the only way. Whereas you've got to have flexibility with your application of loads of stuff in S&C. So I think that's all it is. I'm a very flexible guy when it comes to strength and conditioning. I've got no, I think everything works. And it's like everything's tool in the shed, time, place, application. And maybe I could just explain it well to Joe. I don't know. Or he's just my best mate and listens to me.
Sure. I have one idea. So, of course, right now you have, of course, based off the intro, of course, you coach a lot of the top strongmen in the open class and in the weight class, and also within the strong women divisions. You have about like 5 or 6 coaches working under you. Is that right?
Yes, maybe 7, something like that.
7,
I think.
Okay, so of course you put a lot of work in, like during your like 90 kilo days. I know you're still competing. Of course, you come in and out. But you think just within being a weight class athlete, like for weight class athletes, or what I used to do, you have to be so efficient in what you do, and you have to be so skilled because you can only have so much body weight to kind of work with. Do you think once you kind of master that efficiency and then you bring it into like the open class or teach these other people, that's why you've been as successful as you have, is because you're a weight class athlete rather than a big.
Yeah, I really, the thing is, I said it for decades, mate. Well, a decade. When I was in the 80 kilo class, and I would be really technically efficient with stuff. And I used to train with Hicksy. So, Hicksy's, I'm sure you know, absolute genetic freak. Everything he did just worked, and he could just do stuff. And sometimes he wouldn't have to think about stuff, and he could do it. Whereas for me, I had to dissect and break everything down to be able to do it. Obviously, I was pretty genetically gifted and strong myself, but with leverages and things like this, because I'm naturally like an 80 kilo athlete, really. That's kind of where I came from, my frame. So just being able to handle things like monster dumbbells and stuff like the way they sit on your body and stuff, and stones when you're trying to lap a big stone and you've got these little T-Rex arms, you've got to really learn what to do with your hands and your position and stuff like that. And it goes down to every single strongman event, really, that you can break them down a lot and you can get quite technical with them. Whereas a lot of the open weights, the ones that kind of just come into the sport as a big open, they didn't have to build the way up for the weight classes. Sometimes they can just do stuff and they're like, well, I can do it. So why would I get more technically proficient with it? I can already do it. And for me, that worked for a period of time. But as strongman's getting bigger, you can't get away with that anymore. You have to be just as efficient as the lightweights, in my opinion, as an open.
But I feel the training as like a weight class athlete, there's a necessity to get better or more technical. And we were mentioned before, for heavyweights, there's no really necessity. That's why it takes a while. But now you're seeing, I would say most of these, most of these coaches, I would say, there's a lot of just weight class coaches coaching the open class, which is pretty interesting. But speaking of the open class, you have. But here, I didn't want to cut you off before I get on to the next.
No, I'm saying you're very right with the weight class thing. It's a necessity to get more technical, because a lot of the times, let's say you've mastered technical efficiency, the only way to get stronger really is to add some muscle tissue and keep plugging away at the movement over time, and you'll slowly outgrow your class, which is why people move up classes, isn't it? Because it's kind of like, I'm maximizing what I've got access to, I need to bump up. So weight class athletes tend to master the skill efficiency as a necessity, whereas an open weight's always got the option of, I'll just get bigger and stronger and push things more, whereas that weight class athlete needs to stay the same and increase the weights they lift, which comes through execution, doesn't it?
It sure does. But I get the benefit right now of just gaining weight and putting on more tissue and getting stronger, which is quite fun after 10 years of being 105 kilo. But I was mentioning this weekend, we have the Giants Live World Tour Finals. You got a couple of athletes. You got the Lukes competing, Richardson and Stoltman. How are they looking for this weekend?
Yeah, looking really good. We got Pavlo as well. Pavlo recently came on. This is only a short.
When did you start with him?
We've been about 6 weeks now, so it's not very long at all. And we're actually training for Rogue, and he got an invite to Glasgow a couple of days ago. So it's more of a just rock up kind of job with Pav. But for the Lukes, Luke Stoltz coming back from a bicep injury, not a full tear, but he had a tear in his tendon, and we've been reloading that for forever. Seems like it took way longer than I wanted to reload, but we had a test run at Vegas that went super well. I was really happy with it, and it kind of got his nerves out, because first one back where you're actually just going is always a bit nervy, especially because he hurt his bicep on that car yoke at Worlds, actually. So it was a bit of a ropey yoke to go back to. So yeah.
Is it because he didn't fit? Because it was pretty narrow. Like, I had trouble fitting into that car yoke. Is it because he's such a wide frame? I
think he's like, the way he set his hands, is a lot of pressure on his biceps, and then obviously it moves a little bit, and I think he's maybe pushed to try and control it, and the biceps crunched on that car yoke. So it was a bit of a weird one to go back to for his first event, but that's knocked the nerves off. And then we are training for Rogue, but a lot of the events cross over, so he's in real good nick for Glasgow. And then Luke R, he's just been away with his partner. She was doing, I think it's IPF don't know if it was Worlds, maybe Worlds. So he's been away on holiday for a couple of weeks. And did a few sessions in the warm-up area of the IVF comp, and then's got one session in. So with Luke, it's a very relaxed comp as well for these guys, for us going into Glasgow. It's not like we've not done some crazy serious prep for it. But this is what I wanted for Luke R. I wanted him to tick off more competitions and go in relaxed rather than always peaking for it. I wanted to turn up, showcase what he's got, and then we can move on to the off season next for Britain's Strongest Man next year.
All right, excellent. Well, of course, we'll look forward to seeing him compete. But do you think they have enough juice in the tank to dethrone Mitch this weekend?
I think that at this level of strongman, your GPP is the most important thing, and I think that Luke R's preparedness is crazy. So even though he's had this little bit of time away, we've been building his last show when he did the log lift champs, he made quite a few mistakes. It was his first one back, super nervous. I think he could have pushed Mitch at that show if he'd have had a clean run on everything. So I'm thinking this weekend, Luke, if he does what he's capable of, and his deadlift's improved as well since the last show because he's coming back from that hamstring tear. So it's a weird phase to be in because he's gaining strength every couple of weeks through that hinge pattern. So I think he'll get an extra rep or two on the deadlift setup. It's the same setup. And if he puts everything together, I think Luke could have a real good run at it with those events. They're good events for Luke R. Luke Stolt and Pavlo, I know that this is more of a stepping stone to Rogue. So they're going to be looking to put in really good performances to build on into Rogue. But I do know those two have got laser focus on kind of a couple of weeks afterwards.
Excellent. For the listeners, I know what GPP is, but what can you explain to listeners how that affects athletes?
So GPP is general physical preparedness, your ability to be able to jump in and do something. As is it Josh Bryant who coaches Tom Haviland? Is that who he is? Josh Bryant. He likes to call it gas station ready.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that term, gas station ready. Because a load of strong men would be like, give me 10 minutes to warm up a little bit before I, get into any physical activity. Whereas gas station ready is just like, just rock up and be strong. And that's what, at this level of Strongman with Giants Live, I think that's super important because if you're a regular on the scene in the UK, you can't really prep for every show. You just got to be prepared to perform because there's so many shows to do, and then you can pick your main shows to fully prep for throughout the year. So that's what GPP is, the ability for you to grab someone off of the sofa like Pavlo, 10 days notice, come do Glasgow. He's like, yes, I can do all the events, I can smash it, and he can get him.
Yeah, like it. What do you think about Big Trey? Trey has been on a run lately. Hopefully he can podium again. Where do you see Big Trey kind of fitting into this mix?
Trey surprised me with his yoke run. Didn't surprise me anywhere else because I knew he was going to be amazing everywhere else. But he did surprise me with his yoke run at Vegas. Looked like it improved quite a lot. At Glasgow, there's a yoke into farmers carry or farmers into yoke. I'm not sure which way around it is. I think if Trey can do well on that event, then the rest of the events are really good for him. So, I think he'll do really well.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to it. You've attended many Giants Live events. Of course, coach a lot of athletes in it. What does it take to be successful in that type of format in terms of like big lights, big crowd, short rest in between events? Do you have what tips do you have for new coming athletes going into a Giants Live show?
Yeah, so it's conditioning is such a factor at those shows. Can't really stress it enough. That's what I mean by GPP as well, guys, is your fitness, your aerobic capacity. If you think about GPP as kind of a pyramid, your aerobic fitness is the bottom of the pyramid. A lot of people think when it comes to preparing for strongman shows that volume of like training that you can handle, they think that's the bottom of the pyramid. That's the bottom of my base. That's me building my base to grow and get stronger and peak. But aerobic fitness is below volume, because the higher your aerobic capacity, the more volume you're going to be able to handle. So volume's actually a peg up on the kind of pyramid overall. So being fit and being able to do like some moderate intensity cardiovascular exercise for like 20 to 30 minutes in a row and hold that pace is super important, as well as being able to have the ability to output, work for 60 seconds. That's important, but that aerobic fitness is the one that people lack, because anybody in the world can go absolutely mad for 60 seconds, but it depends on how you feel after it that really matters. So that aerobic capacity is going to allow them to recover. So that's super, super important. In terms of how to deal with the stress and the lights and the crowd and everything, that's going to be super individual to the athlete, and you're going to have to just learn to perform in the moment, because it really is a bit of a different. I've watched so many strongman shows, probably thousands. Giant Sliver is something else. It's really something else. So, and I've never obviously done it myself and walked out and lifted, so I don't really know. But people either thrive in that moment or they do kind of buckle a little bit. So I think you just got to do whatever it is individually to handle that pressure and make sure you pull out the performance, because everybody can do stuff in the gym, but it's doing it under them lights that is tough.
Especially, I would say, you talk about the stress and the lights and all. I think Glasgow is the biggest stadium that they go to, so this should be pretty interesting, especially if it's going to be a close to sold out show. Originally, I got an invite back in late May, right after Worlds, but it was 2 days after my bicep surgery, and I told the guys that I was out. But I almost could have been there this weekend if I stayed healthy. But yeah, maybe next year, because that's definitely
how many weeks out from the surgery are you now? You're about 20 or something.
22 weeks. So yeah. I'm still sub 6 months, which is kind of like the marker.
It'd be a little close and fresh. It's doable, isn't it? But it is a little, to commit to it that far out. It is a bit. You needed to know nearer the time, really, didn't you? If you're going to get the invite or not.
And longevity is my goal, and of course, I want to come in nice and fresh. So everybody will have to wait until early next year. But we got some fun questioning going on in terms of getting into some of the pressing stuff. But first, I got to we got a nice word from our sponsors. Are you ready to shake up your training? Are you ready for your next challenge? Tsunami Bar Sports is here to boost your power, stability, and coordination. Whether you're superloading and using it to target barbell-centric movements or using it for ballistic weighted plyometrics for more sport-specific purposes, the Tsunami Bar has you covered. Our patented and flexible barbell technology is designed to help you improve in all things human performance. Discover the difference at Tsunami Bar Sports today. Visit tsunamisports.com to learn more. Use CANBY10 for 10% off of any Tsunami Bar product, or pause the screen and use the QR code. Now back to the show. Have you ever used a Tsunami Bar, Shane?
I would love to, mate, but I have never used one. I know the Tsunami Bar is the Canby Bar because I followed your training. So I followed your training. I had you on Instagram for probably 10 years, I don't know how long. And every time I use that Tsunami Bar, I watch in awe, thinking, what does that feel like? I'm like, what is it? What's the sensation? Because it looks really nice. It looks like something super beneficial for that dynamic and explosive movement, and I've been able to absorb it at the bottom and everything. I think it looks cool.
Just so for instance, the bottom of every lift. So like for instance, if you're doing like a reactive press, so the bottom of each one is more kind of significant than a traditional barbell. So it just feels like heavier at the bottom. Then it goes extremely light, and then it gets extremely heavy again. And so just the variable load kind of throughout. But yesterday I was doing squats. So lately I've been doing it just because I don't know if you saw my squats from last night. It's just it's super bendy. So it's just a really relaxed positioning, and it's easy for my bicep, and just having that nice kind of back rack position. So I can hold it kind of lower, get a feel for it. But at the bottom of everything, because the weight will come up and then you want to shoot back up, but the weight wants to go down. So I feel like I'm going to my blood has got to come through my face. So it's definitely nice training, but I'm not going to go any heavier than kind of 500. I'm going to start kind of back down and do another block. But it was a nice little training block. But I think they do ship out to the UK. So if anybody's just listening in the UK, they do ship out that way.
Well, they do ship to the UK,
but they do, yes. I think in the past they didn't, but they do.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I had a gym, I looked at buying one. That's why I knew I didn't think you could get one, because I looked at buying one when I had a gym. So yeah.
It's what if you're, of course, if you have ever in your clients, it's great for, I would say, people that need to build more competency in their press. So for instance, they're trying to like learn a split jerk and they're all over the place with their form. It really reinforces the form, and they have to do a great knee bend. They have to do, I would say, punch it in the right direction, or else it's going to humble you, and the bar is going to either go shake away or shake in front of you.
I guess you have to split. You have to split stable, because if you don't, when you catch at the top, it's going to move you everywhere side to side and throw you split catch off, I guess.
Yeah. So it forces you to be very proficient, and again, it reinforces that form. But I got the opportunity to go to one of your seminars. That was a lot of fun. Me and Maya. And of course, I learned a whole lot. But we're talking a little bit on the dumbbell. I think we have a little kind of contradicting views in terms of the rack positioning. But what I liked, of course, about the dumbbell, or about going to your seminar, is that because of course, for myself, eventually I want to become a coach, and I know my form is not going to be something for everybody. So I want to learn from the other, of course, best press coaches. But you do, of course, the interesting feel in terms of tucking the elbow in terms of the dumbbell. I'm more sitting out with kind of like pushing my rear delt, or pushing my delt, pushing my lat out, having that activation before I engage the dumbbell press. But overall, you were mentioned that I'm the only one that you've seen that have been successful with kind of that, with that form in terms of sticking out the lat like you would do maybe on like a front double bicep. That's kind of how I equate it.
Well, it's not the only one, because there's the people online I've seen do it as well. But what I was found interesting about you was that you can throw the dumbbell from the clean, and you can just let go, and it lands in that rack position, doesn't it? Which is amazing for repping, because you're going to be able to like almost cycle your reps, like clean, catch, rack, press. Whereas the way I do it is I have to guide the dumbbell with my overarm and turn it to the direction that I want. Because if I were to let that dumbbell, if I were to just throw it and let it go, I would never be able to land it. It'd land somewhere close, but it would, when you do a dumbbell, if it's not quite right, don't you? And you've got to adjust it. So yeah, your rack position is something that I wouldn't tell you to change it, really, to be honest with you, unless you were failing. Let's say you fail the max weight because the rack broke, then that's a little different. But you're not failing your dumbbells on that. So my kind of set in stone cues with dumbbell are more elbow in line with pin, which I think your elbow is in line with pin.
Mm-hmm.
Hand as close to ear as possible, which again, yours is further away, isn't it? That's one of the things that we had differences. But what you're doing is you're kind of shifting your weight a little bit towards that side. So the outcome's kind of the same. Closer to ear makes you close to the center line. If you're further away from ear, you have to tilt a little bit to get it to center line. So I think overall we kind of come to the same outcome, but it just gets there different ways, which is the thing with dumbbell especially, is I don't really think, I didn't mean to say that my way is like, the set in stone way I teach it. It's more just like, these are the concepts that I want to get. Elbow in line with pin, dumbbell in the center of your body, which usually hand to ear is a good way of getting it there. But if you can get there elsewhere, as long as you can dip properly, then you're sweet, aren't you? Because that's how people fail dumbbell, isn't it? Can be the dumbbell moves when they dip usually, or it doesn't even feel like it's sat in rack position properly.
Sure. Well, a lot of times with the elbow. So if your elbow dips when you're going down, and then you have to fight the elbow going dip. So it's really important to have that great rack position. I think men have an easier time. Women, I think, really have a struggle in terms of having. I don't think maybe pound for pound their lat strength is as strong as guys. So they usually have trouble keeping that lat up. So usually they have that really low rack position in terms of the dumbbell. But I think the lat is almost like everything, because I'm almost, if I do it right, and ideally I can almost, when I engage the dip, I can almost like punch the dumbbell with my delt to get that little bit more separation before I either try to get under it or.
Is your lat really active in kind of, because
yes.
Interesting. Right, okay. Because my lats, when I do my lats relaxed. Interesting.
That's I try to transfer it over, but I do kind of like the cue in terms of keep it close to your ear. Sometimes I just feel like if I do a lot of dumbbell training, I'm shifted on that one side for too long, then I start getting a little bit of kind of imbalances. So I
think also there's something to be said about the way people learn dumbbell in US versus UK. I realized it when I was at that seminar. Your dumbbells are quite a bit different, I'll be honest with you, to ours. I'll be straight. They're a lot different.
The cylinder heads or the spheres?
All of them. They're all real. They're all like, the handles are so short that it changes the sensation in rack position, because there's not really much freedom for your arm to really move, because if I go this way, I hit the dumbbell. If I go that way, I hit the dumbbell, because it's like really quite a short handle, like just enough to get my hand around. Whereas the most common dumbbell in the UK is a Rebel Strength dumbbell, and their handle is almost double the length of the USA handles, of all those handles that I use, because there was like 3 different dumbbells there, and all of them had the same length handle. The Rebel Strength's almost double the length handle.
Interesting. Because I have noticed that, because sometimes I do have to put an extra pad for those type of cylinder dumbbells, but preferably if I had a choice, I would train on all Thomas Inch and Sear dumbbells, because usually those are the most comfortable, and then I don't have to change the weight. I mean, it kind of makes it easy.
Yeah, and I think if you can properly rack a Sear dumbbell, because I think they're harder to rack personally. So I think if you can rack those comfortably, you can transfer over to those, because your rack looks like what I would teach how to rack a Sear dumbbell. That's what your rack looks like, because that's how I rack a Sear dumbbell, but not a monster dumbbell.
Interesting.
Yeah. Do you rack both the same?
Yeah, I would say so. And I personally have a Sear dumbbell. It's over at my buddy Eric's gym right now. But I have a 95 kilo one, which I use for a lot of training. I haven't got to use
that's
it.
How I rack it. I'd teach a Sear like that, and to be quite heavy through the lat. But a monster dumbbell, I make it so that it feels like it's just through my spine. Like I'm not feeling it in my elbow. My elbow couldn't dip. It's just through my back with a monster. It feels completely different. Whereas a Sear, I'm very latty, because I have to almost fight the Sear from moving a little bit, so I've got to create this tension here. Whereas with a monster dumbbell, I can relax my arm once it's racked and just be completely relaxed. It's almost like a squat bar. It feels like.
Now, so I've said this before, but I think the denseness of like an inch or a Sear dumbbell, because of the denseness, you have a longer range of motion. But if you're able to get really competent on those, once you move to a bigger cylinder or another type of dumbbell, you're more proficient, you're more effective, just because you've been training on something more dense. Do you also feel the same?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
All right, interesting. Of course, I want to get this good kind of pressing question. So speaking of pressing, what's some great opportunity to ask most important cues or advice on pressing portion of a log press, which is kind of the next section. So kind of we'll start off a little early, Josh. Of course, I have a little bit more of an Olympic style of log press. You have your kind of lean back method or your head back method. Of course, me and Joe talked about it for extensively when he came to visit in Boston back in 2021. But yeah, what are your kind of cues or your takeaways in terms of the pressing portion of a log? What do you preach to your clients?
So I'm kind of known for pushing the strict press. online, but behind the scenes, it's not necessarily the case. It's I believe the best way to press a log is a push press with a head back. That's so I try and get people to push press with head back. I also believe that log strict press is a completely different lift to a log push press. So I don't put them in the same category. And I use the log strict press as one of the main press accessories to help a log push press. Now, the kind of where people came in and were like, oh, Shane teaches the strict presses, because it's a completely separate lift. There have been times where I have been building someone's strict press in the background to help their push press. And they say to me, Shane, I prefer strict pressing this. And then over time, they kind of become a strict press logger because they feel like it's more efficient for them than the push press. And I'm on the fence with this, where I'm like, I also did this because I was a really good log push presser. Like, I had really good technique. I'm really explosive. I've weightlifted for years as well. But then when I started pushing my strict press as a kind of fun side quest, I was like, why is this getting better than my push press? And because I experienced that feeling, I can't argue against it, because I also tried to go back to push press. Like, oh, now that my strict press is so good, maybe I'll push press for a while and see if I can get even more. But it just didn't work out like that for me. So I treat them as two separate lifts. So my best advice, to go back to the question, would be find out which style of pressing you're best suited to. Is it a push press, a power jerk, or a split jerk? I think they're all viable ways of pressing a log. I think the split jerk and the power jerk are much harder on a log than a barbell, but some people do prefer it. Find out what you're most suited to, first of all, and make that your main lift. But whichever lift you choose to pursue as your main lift, the log strict press is the best assistance for log press, in my opinion, personally, because I think you can do so much volume. I think you can handle frequency with it. And I just think that it's something that you can really milk to help build whatever the hell your main lift is. So, yeah.
Interesting. I always say that good athletes should be proficient in the, let's just say, a strict / Viper push press and some sort of jerk. I think they should have all three in their arsenals, just depending on if they have a medley, a medley, something for reps, a max. So they'd be prepared for whatever kind of situation. But for the most part, of course, I've been trying, even right now during this little off season that I have, now that I'm kind of 22 weeks out, then now I'm into the off season that I wanted back in after Worlds. But now I've been trying some of the lean back methods. So I feel that it's a lot of like triceps and of course triceps and shoulders, but I feel like I'm not getting like the upper back stimulation that I would when I force my head through. When usually I like to kind of force everything through. Now not only do I get the shoulders and triceps involved, but I get my scaps, my lats. I get my whole system into it. I kind of like squeeze upwards where I'm pushing up against the weight. So if the weight ever kind of falls or gets out of position, I'm still kind of pushing up against the weight. And then it's really easy to transfer that skill onto a jerk. So would you keep the head back or lean back on if you're also split jerking a log, or would that be a totally different technique?
So this is just my opinion.
Yeah. I want to hear.
Straight log should be an accessory for the main lift. So if the main lift, you feel all these sensations, then get that adaptation from the main lift. But the strict log is what it is. Everything you're explaining is what it is. That's the benefits that it gives you. So I would just accept it for what it is and milk those benefits. And then for the head through, you already get that on your push press log, when you split jerk, when you do your other, like your Tsunami Bar work, or if you're doing barbell strict, or I'm a big fan of behind the neck strict, I really like that. All those adaptations, you get that from those exercises. The strict log really allows you to get heavy, high volume, high frequency tricep, shoulder, strict volume in, and that's what I use it for. I spam some. The first thing anyone says to my coaches, there's a lot of strict log volume here because there's so much volume. That's what I use it for, volume. Like 10 sets of 6 would be a common block that I use. And then we'll periodize it 10 by 6, 10 by 6, 10 by 5, 10 by 5, 10 by 4, 10 by 4, 10 by 3, 10 by 3. We'll go down, boom. And that's a 6-week, 8-week block that we use commonly, but it's 10 sets of high volume because the strict log, it's not nasty on your joints. It's really nice on your joints. You're not having to dip and be dynamic through the knees, so you don't need to worry about the knees, getting overworked, which I think is the limiting factor for most people's pressing volume. Is if they're push pressing and dynamic, it's usually the knees and hips and stuff that go before the shoulders. I find that if you've got good shoulder mobility, they can handle a lot of volume through the shoulders. So the strict log from rack, remove the clean, use it, milk it, get just volume, build those shoulders, triceps, chest as well, because when you're leaning back, your chest's very involved. Then that will carry over to in my opinion, every single press variation you do in strongman, it carries over to, because you'll build so much tissue and so much size and raw strength. So that's how I view the strict log, because if we spam that much on barbell, I find people on my elbows, my wrists, they start to, the myofascial side, the tendons, ligaments, they start to go first. So, we've got to tone the volume down. We're overtraining. Strict log, I haven't found a volume limit for it. It just is so, you can go so high with it. You can go stupid with it, which is why it's so easy, in my opinion, to milk, because you can then chuck so much volume at an athlete. They adapt, they respond, they grow, and then boom, suddenly they're getting PBs on the push press log, the push press axle, everything.
Now, what do you think about the rack position when it comes to a log? Now, I'm a big proponent of forcing the delts up, so you almost create I would say a shelf, so you're able not only to, I coined this, I don't know what other term you would use it for, but I call it the body pop. You're able to use your, kind of like similar to what we're talking on the dumbbell. I'm able to use my delts to punch the log upwards with just using my delts, but also it creates a rack so you can breathe in that rack position, and you can breathe and then engage your dip and drive. But what do you teach, or what do you think about the rack position in the log?
Yeah, so on a push press log, exactly that. I really like as a coach, like a good coach's thing to look at is, if you look from the front, can I see through, and see the wall behind? Because when somebody pushes that shoulder up, there's this little bit of space created here where you can kind of see light peering through, and that always showcases a good rack position on the log for the push press. Whereas on the strict press log, I actually want the shoulders more down and them to be leaning back, elbow to be directly under wrist. And more extension through lower T-spine, because the log push press rack requires a lot of T-spine extension higher up, but the strict log, you want to be going lower down, the lumbar and extending back even further, so that you're able to press directly upwards and then be still through midfoot. So the two, like I say, I treat the lifts as two different lifts. I don't strict press from a push press rack position, because I think that limits load massively. And then for me, the way I coach peeps is, how can we maximize load exposure? So if we can change that strict press rack to more an Olympic bent press style, it changes how much weight you can get off of the chest. And to be honest, sometimes I've got so much force off of my chest on a strict log, I'm like, did I push press that? Because it felt like a leg drived it. So I think they're really two different racks, but I completely agree on the push press rack. I think that almost like an Olympic style rack really is kind of what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, because I've been playing around with different kind of if I'm doing strict log for reps, I haven't been getting into the big rack positioning. I've been kind of rolling it up, almost staying in the lean back, and then just kind of strengthening it. So I like that piece in terms of it's two different lifts. I think that's a good way to kind of think about it going forward. So I'll play around with it. But for the listeners, you want to tell them what your best strict press was at what body weight?
So I did a 190 on the log, and I was like 105 kilo. You know, I wasn't. People like to say 90, but I wasn't 90. I was 105. But like 105 was like weight in the gym as well, like fully clothed. So I guess I was like 102 or something. So it was pretty good strict log. My best push press log, I was 90 kilos, like pretty much bang on, and that was 170. Was my best push press log.
But that I remember that strict press years ago. That was quite the thing at that body weight. Only if you recorded it did in competition could have been a record. I think we were. Well, I'm not sure if I broke the record at the time or I broke the record shortly after. But I remember seeing that. I'm like, I'm split.
Yeah, Emmanuel Pascari's. Oh, somebody else has beaten it now. I think the record's one.
His name is Patrick Zenica, maybe from Slovenia.
Yeah, no, is it 192?
It's I think it might be 193. It's whatever 425 pounds comes out to be. But it's
crazy standard in strongman nowadays, isn't there? Crazy.
Yeah, but I think he's the first person that, like, for instance, like myself, I was of course a pretty decent competitor. Emmanuel's a pretty good, decent competitor. Win shows. When I broke the record. Before that was Rob Kearney. So the record was always held by like really good strongmen that were good at competitions. I think Patrick is the first one that has never really barely does any full shows, or it doesn't really go in I would say the main realm of a 105 top show. So he's like the first one just being a pure log specialist and like doing pretty well at it. So. Yeah. So it's pretty amazing. But that was some good conversation for logs. So we'll, of course, move on. Looking at competitions, I know you, of course, have a lot of competitors, especially you prep them through competitions. But when the training's all done and they're 1 week out from the competition, if they're feeling nervous, what do you normally tell them?
Well, nowadays, I don't really get that, to be honest with you, because I don't coach very many people anymore. So there's not that many nervous people. The only one is Lucy, who always has a pre-comp hissy fit. But because it's just part of the process now. So my way of solving it is, Lucy, let's look at the last 20 competitions. Every single one we've had this hissy fit where it's all going wrong and terrible. It's going to be okay. This is almost a good thing because it's part of the routine. And that's with Lucy, that's just how I deal with it. I'm just reminded that it's part of the process. It's part of the routine now. If it was out of the blue random, obviously it'd be completely different how I deal with it. But for Lucy, it literally is. This is just the part of the time where toys are out the pram, everything's going a little bit wrong. Usually it'd be because she'll like miss a lift or something that she's done like 100 times before, but she'll just miss it in a throw hissy. And with Lucy, it always comes. Actually, this deadlift prep was the first prep where she didn't throw a hissy, actually. So, but she still got the record, so it was all right. But yeah, usually if it's kind of guys that, like back in the day when I was coaching and people were nervous, the best advice I can give to people is that nerves are a positive thing. A lot of times people associate nerves with a negative thing. But nerves / anxiety, that sensation that you're feeling, whether you feel it in your stomach or some people feel it in the heart, the top of the chest, wherever you feel that sensation of nerves, this is a positive thing that we've evolved to do as a safety mechanism to be able to perform. That's what it is. It's almost like a defense mechanism so that we're able to recruit more muscle tissue, recruit neurologically faster twitch fibers and explode so that we could run away from danger or fight if we needed to. This is what it was evolved to do. We're evolved to have this sensation to extract something from it. So if you start looking at these nerves as more of a positive thing than a negative thing, then it can almost rewire your mindset towards them. And it can almost be a signaling to say it's go time. This is the feeling I get when it's go time. and you turn it into a positive thing rather than, oh, I'm really scared and I don't know what's going on, blah, blah, blah. Learn to control that sensation, and it means you're ready to perform. And if you flip your mindset a little bit, it can help a lot.
Excellent. I love that answer. I normally get pretty nervous before competitions. I threw up both of my breakfasts before Europes. So I had 2 breakfasts, both went out of the system. And then,
well, this is the thing.
There was one competition.
Nerves are performance enhancing, but it's also that fight or flight response is the sympathetic nervous tone. Sympathetic nervous tone equals you're not going to digest food properly. So if you're somebody like that, you just need to plan for that and have really, really light, easy, digestible foods. And remember that on competition day, the only thing that matters really is blood sugar levels and access to glucose. So even if you're just drinking carbohydrates, that's okay. Like you don't necessarily need some big solid meal in you. Or proteins or fats. You don't really need that stuff. It's carbohydrates that are required and balancing of blood sugar levels. So if you know you're somebody like that, then it's okay to primarily drink your calories on competition day. It's not going to affect you.
Interesting. I'll keep that in mind. But I was gonna say that the one time I didn't feel nervous, I didn't do well. I'm like, it's like I don't feel nervous for this at all. I think that something's wrong, and I ended up not doing well. But it was after a bad weight cut.
If you're not nervous, it kind of also tells a tale that you're not too fussed. You know what I mean? Because if you really train for something and you really want something, it's a natural response, isn't it, to be a little nervous because you've set out to do something, you've put loads of work in, and you want it to go well. So you're nervous and thinking about what if it doesn't go well. So it's kind of natural to have these nerves.
Oh yeah. How about yourself? I know you competed last year at OSG, but are you itching to get back onto the competition floor? Are you thinking about it in the future, maybe in 2025?
Yeah, well, it was a tough pill to swallow as OSG because throughout my whole career of competing in anything, I always do really well. And then OSG, I did terribly. So yeah, but there was a lot to be learned from that, many lessons. So it was a good lesson for me, that one.
What did you learn from West Virginia?
So I should have. It goes back to that nerves thing and performing and whatnot. I was coaching so many athletes, and there was loads of people coming up to me and talking to me because I'm kind of like this Instagram coach, kind of like social media dude within the strongman scene, aren't I? And when you compete, you should be in a flow state, so you shouldn't be thinking about anything. You should just be like dun, 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 going through it. Sometimes I've done competitions and I can't even recall what I did during the event, because I just did it. What I trained to do happened. At OSG, I was very much it was a conscious competition. I was thinking about I was aware of stuff. And the reason being is because I think I put a bit too much pressure on myself to do well instead of just usually when I rock up to competitions, I'm not thinking about doing well. I'm just thinking about doing my job and competing kind of thing. Whereas I was thinking about the outcome a little bit too much, if that makes sense. And because of that, I didn't want to make any mistakes. And by telling myself and going through the events consciously, I was making mistakes, basically. I should have just let myself go. Another one, the carry drag medley. This is the one that I've learned the biggest lesson on. Because I made a mistake on the press medley, I put even more pressure on myself not to make a mistake on the carry drag medley. I am really fast. Like, it's my thing that I'm good at is like running fast and carrying stuff fast. But I'm like, right, pick this implement up. Right, run, right, don't fall. Don't go too fast in case you fall. This is what I'm thinking during a strongman event. That's fucking amateur. Don't put it on the sled. Make sure it doesn't bounce off on the sled. Right, run back. Right, okay. Make sure you grab it properly. Get set. Pick it up. Right, run back. Don't go too fast. Don't fall. You're in front, because I was in front of my group. So I was like, just hold the front. Right, then drag. Didn't think on the drag. Dragged that pretty well. I know, looking back, I could have saved 5 seconds probably if I just didn't think any of them things and just picked the damn bags up, because they're light bags for me. I can just grab the things and flick them in the air and sprint with them. I also could have run faster, but because I was in front, I was telling myself, don't go faster in case you fall over. And it was this whole conscious, like, mental thing where usually what you should be doing, guys, is just running the stuff because you've trained to do it hundreds of times. You just run with them. So that was my lesson from OSG was, dude, chill the fuck out. Separate coach from athlete, because that's the problem. Is I was like getting in the zone, and I was coaching, and then somebody was coming over asking for a picture with me or something. I've never competed that before. Yeah, well, usually when I competed in shows like eight years ago, I'd be in a car park with like random people. It'd be a big show, but it would just be like us lot competing. It wasn't a big. There was no thing around it. Whereas I put so much pressure on this show. That I really messed up my execution, which is something I've never done for all my powerlifting shows, all my other shows. Never really had to learn that lesson. So it was a good one. But to go back to your question, to what am I going to do? I really wanted to do OSG this year. I really wanted to do loads of shows this year. That was my plan. But it's really hard to juggle this coaching life, Canby. I'll be honest with you. I've just been too busy, mate. I really have. And that's not even like, you know, sometimes people say they've been too busy and they haven't been. I really have been. So yeah, it's all up in the air.
Well, you're a married man now, so that of course, you know, you're busy. You have responsibilities.
I've coached this year, Canby. I've coached every Giants live show. I've coached every Arnold. There's only 2, UK and US, but I've coached the Arnold. I've coached every OSG show. I've coached World's Strongest Man. I've coached rope. There's literally been I've done seminars for free in the UK. I've been traveling around 4 weekends of seminars for free, just to help out the kind of like up and coming strongman scene. And I'm trying to like move house, selling our house, and I've just got married. So yeah, there's a lot going on this year. Rebranded my business, opened up like a new merch line, hiring coaches. I've been really quite busy, so it's not a random excuse that I've been too busy. I've been putting in some graft, Canby.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, we'll be excited whenever you get back to the competition floor. But I think whatever you end up doing, you'll do it with your full commitment. But we've been pretty positive on the show, and I know you've watched the show in the past. But one of my recurring questions is usually what grinds your gears. And as a coach and as someone that's been in the sport for a while, I imagine there's a lot of things that grind your gears. So this is a good segment for you to get worked up and let out those frustration of what grinds your gears and what gets you going when you see the world of strongman or the world of gym training and all.
This is a really strange one, but as much as I've talked about before, I talked about being technical. I almost think there's this era of strongman coming where people are too technical, and we're kind of losing pick the fucking thing up and get strong, bro. When people over analyzing simple events and giving crazy technical cues, and then novice Joe is trying to do these crazy technical things to pick up a sandbag that he's just not strong enough to pick up. And I'm like, you got to put in your time getting strong. You know, there are times where there are technical things that need to be applied, but it's called strongman. There is an element of be strong, pick the thing up. I think that was very much the way it was 10 or so years ago. That was kind of how it was coached. It was like, do your rows and, you know, whatnot, and do this and do that, get really strong back, and then you can pick the thing up. Whereas now there's this phase coming in where it's like, no, we don't do the gym training. We just learn to do these little weird things to the bag and you can pick it up. That grinds my gears a little bit. I think there's a really low ceiling cap on that style of training. And I think that you need to make sure you're getting strong as fuck. I could keep going for like 50
what do you think? Well, give me one more that really gets your blood boiling.
People becoming coaches in 15 fucking seconds, that pisses me off. You know, they make weight once in a comp and now they're a nutritionist, or I think it should be illegal. It really annoys me because you can't do that in any other profession in the world. You can't do that. But in the kind of strength scene, you can just become a nutritionist overnight. or a strength coach overnight. That annoys me.
In your world, how long should they be doing strongman, or how many competitions should you do before you start coaching others? Like 5 years into the sport, maybe 30 competitions on your belt, maybe
if you want to be a strongman coach, do what you want. Because this is what people forget in strongman. If I wanted to learn boxing, I would go to a boxing gym and the guy would teach me to throw hooks, jab, move. He'd teach me everything about boxing. But then if I started to go like pro or something, the guy would be like, oh, maybe you need a strength and conditioning coach, bro. So I would have my boxing coach and my strength and conditioning coach to get better at the athleticism of the sport, etc. So that's sweet. If you can coach strongman, you're a strongman coach. But nobody calls themselves strongman coaches. They call themselves strength and conditioning coaches. And there's a clear difference. And you can coach strongman all you want to be a strongman coach, but you can't advertise as I am a strength and conditioning coach, because you're not. That's something that you need, a little bit of paperwork for, bro. You need to put your time in to be qualified in that, and it shouldn't be legal to just appear as an S&C coach one day. It just doesn't work like that.
Interesting. That's a great point. I love it, and I hope more people will take to it. We are kind of getting down to the nitty gritty. So, if you guys have any questions for Shane, I will put them down now. Shane, you got another 10 minutes in you? Does that work?
Yeah, I didn't even realize I've been here an hour. To be honest with you,
you sure have you. I just want to say, Rosendo, thank you for becoming a member. So, guys, I have a lot of exclusive member-only videos. So, if you guys want to check those out, become a member. But also, I noticed that you're a big Dragon Ball Z guy. Who's your favorite character, or what's your favorite transformation?
My favorite transformation, it's got to be old school Super Saiyan 3. That's my favorite transformation.
Fuck! That's my favorite. It's my favorite transformation.
Yeah, to go even further beyond, mate. When I was a kid, I was like, "Wow!"
Did we just become best friends?
My favorite character, though, is Zamasu. Big Zamasu lover me. I think he's class.
Oh man, some new episodes. Are you planning on? A lot of people ask me if I'm getting Sparkling Zero, but I think I've already watched too much. I feel like I've already watched all the gameplay. I already know the whole game.
That's creepy. All I've watched for about 5 days is people play Sparking Zero.
It is pretty wild. It looks great, but I feel like if I bought it, I would get bored within a few days. So
it's more if you're into the PvP and you want to like do the ranked stuff. I imagine you could maybe get addicted to it, but the story mode, I imagine, you could milk that pretty quickly. I watched somebody play the whole story randomly. I've watched far too much. I watch people play games. It's a random side hobby of mine, mate. I don't know why, because I get addicted to stuff, so I can't play it myself. I used to be a professional Call of Duty player. If you want to know an old fact, there's an old fact for you.
Really, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, Call of Duty 4. Used to go to LANs.
You're a man of many talents.
Yeah, I used to go to LANs. I played for Team Cooler Master. There's a company called Cooler Master that make cases. Or I don't know if they still exist because I'm not involved in this world anymore, but they make PC cases that had like water cooling and stuff. Cooler Master. I used to play for Team Cooler Master, Call of Duty 4. Yeah. Fact.
So I'm going back a little bit on the questions. Joseph Tower says both Lukes are looking spicy for this weekend. I do agree with you. Here's an interesting one. I have a world's strongest disabled man there in England in 2 weeks. Thoughts on training stone strength quickly. Heaviest I have is 262. Heaviest at Worlds is 352. Isometrics, any thoughts? Thanks.
So his heaviest stone is 120, and there's like a 160 in comp is my conversion to kilos. Yes. Cool. Well, the main difference is the size of the stone as well. You've got to take that into account because the 120 stone's not the biggest stone in the world, and a 160 stone gets a little bigger. So there is going to be a little bit of a difference in feel there. But in terms of what I would do to train for it is I would, if it was me, I would just be more competent at repping the lighter stone, to be honest with you. but with no tacky reapplication, because as you start repping it, your tacky is maybe getting a little less sticky, and use that as a good training stimulus, that you've got to squeeze the stone harder and you've got to be more efficient with your positions and stuff. And that's how I would do it, is I would aim for rep PBs on the lighter stone, because it's not too light that it's not going to transfer. It's a good training weight, really, to be honest with you. But if that's all you got access to, volume PBs, rep PBs, shoulder it maybe, stuff like that, to increase your extension, get more proficient with the lighter stone.
I'm curious what his disability is. I don't know if he's doing if it's one arm where he has the.
Oh, was it disabled strongman? I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
World's strongest disabled man in England. So I wonder if he has the rope where he has to attach.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the rope or the goal.
Even too, I would say isometrics or even doing like stone squats would probably help. But anything that you can really squeeze and get around. This is an interesting one. What kind of tweaks has Shane made to Luke's training to help him increase his skill set? Because Luke is is playing different for older athletes like Luke is compared to young athletes, which is pretty interesting, because I imagine he's already he was already a Europe's strongest man before he came and started working with you. I imagine he probably had to do a few tweaks, but he looks as great as shape as he ever has been. So anything you want to shine a light in terms of Luke's training?
So Luke Stoll can handle a lot of training, I'll be honest with you. I know he's older, but he shocks me, actually. He probably wants to train more than I train him, to be honest. But he really does recover really well, I'll be honest with you. I think both the Stockmans do. They've got the genetics, really, to be honest with you. So he doesn't really do less training volume than anybody else. If anything, he probably does more, to be perfectly honest with you. He can handle a lot, he really is resilient as well. He can really put some work in the gym. In terms of what I've changed to increase his skills, no offense to his old coach, but it wasn't too difficult to build upon how he used to train, to be honest with you. Didn't used to train frontal plane. Big thing, I train frontal plane all my athletes, because if you don't train frontal plane, you end up with stability issues that go down the chain.
Can you explain frontal plane?
So frontal plane is basically, let's say you picked your farmers up, both arms. This is like a sagittal plane exercise, because everything's even and we're kind of hinging forward in this plane. Frontal plane would be if we picked a farmer's handle up just on one arm. So we're kind of working through this plane here. So frontal plane was super weak with Luke. Never trained it before. So building frontal plane helps with stability downstream in the hips, etc. That's why his back's real healthy. He doesn't really get any issues in his back. Because a lot of the thing with Luke, when he came on, he's had a lot of issues going on that stopped him doing stuff. Like, he had a pinch in the front of his shoulder as well. So we just fixed his shoulder health, and then he's removed that pinch. Now he can press with more volume. He can handle more volume, because he had a 170 axle when he came to me, and we nearly hit 200 at Worlds. I claim that as a PB because it was kind of like that far away. So that's 30 kilo on a press on someone that's so experienced. That didn't really come through getting him stronger. It came with getting him access to that rack position without pain. That's really where it came from. I'd love to claim that I got him that much stronger, but it just really came from reduction in pain and getting better mobility and stuff. Also, he's clean. You need a lot of internal rotation in the shoulder when you're on the belly. That was the thing that flared his shoulder a lot. So that's why he struggled with the clean, because he'd be in so much pain in that belly rack. So give him access to skills, but he was already highly skilled. It's more getting him pain-free and strong through these different planes of motion that really helped him improve. And then there are subtle things that I've worked on with him on the events where they were just kind of like simple cueing on his dumbbell. I've helped him in person on his farmers as well, because he was over shrugging on his farmers and running a bit like this. Got him to kind of relax his shoulders down. So really, it's like someone who's like really fine-tuned already, but I'm just looking for little tiny things to give him. But for Luke, main thing I've done is increased his resilience for his body and got him pain free, because that in of itself for an athlete can be a game changer if you're in a lot of pain during training and stuff. It means training is not very enjoyable. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, he's the man from Invergordon, so I think you're doing a good job with him. I can answer this one for you. What's Shane's best protocol to tear an athlete's bicep? I would say, yeah, just be reckless. But if you're recovering from a bicep, Shane has a whole series on his YouTube that you should check out.
Dude.
So
it's a shame being known as the bicep snatcher. Here's the problem with being known as the bicep snatcher. It happens in strongman, and it's not my fault. I train them all. It just happens to be I'm the coach, but it just happens in strongman. You know, they lift, especially like worlds and stuff. They give you them odd objects, don't they? That are you can't train for it. You've just like the loading every year at Worlds. They just put these random objects in, and it's like as a strongman, you're going out there and you're sending it as a sprint. So you're gonna rip and grab and hold stuff and pull stuff and grab stuff in unique ways. And sometimes, unfortunately, when you're that strong, if you catch them at the wrong angle, bicep can just go.
Absolutely. You remember Dane from the seminar down in Pawtucket, right? Dane asked Shane if the Trump log at OSG is at 30 pounds above my current PR, 310 Trump. What would you like to see a client hit a few weeks out of the show to have a chance at the Trump log?
Okay. That'd be a multifactorial question. What's the body weight? How much are they cutting? What's comp experience like?
He's a 90 kilo and he's probably cutting like 20 pounds.
20 pounds. Yeah, I wouldn't go for it, broski, because in my opinion, personally, the one thing that takes a hit on comp day for weight class athletes is the press. So if it's going to be a PB that you're banking on, I would personally train to maximize point. I wouldn't, because I don't believe you can go backwards, can you? You can't fail and go back. I believe that is the rule.
Correct.
So I wouldn't do it, mate, personally. 30 pound PR, that's like 10, 12 kilo comp day with a cut. You're on a slightly different log to what you normally train on. You're looking up at a higher ceiling height to what you usually train on. Things are a little different. I wouldn't tell my client to risk it. I would be training for more reps at the lighter weight, personally. What do you say there, Camby?
I said this, actually, I already had this conversation with him. I said to go for the lighter log, just because I think hitting a lot of reps, I think there would be a lot of guys that shoot for the log, but just being the first time there, I think it's better to hit PBs and build momentum through OSG rather than potentially start off with a fail and then going into the rest of the comp. I think he should go out there feeling good about himself rather than potentially a big risk. I think hitting a bunch at the lighter log, I think is going to be a great mark to do.
First event as well. Everybody always underestimates first event because that's the one you're most nervous for, isn't it? Is that Eric?
Eric Carlson. Yeah, you familiar?
Yeah, I know Eric. Yeah, of course, Eric. It's geez.
I know. We got some Twitch comments, which is good. We're getting both sides. And then Dane follows up, goes, makes sense, gents. Play it safe. Take the reps, PBs. Yes, Dane. You'll make us proud.
First event, Dane. Trust me, every single person at any competition, they're the most nervous for the first event. And once they get first event out of the way, it's all easy. They kind of relax a little bit. Log, heavy max PB log is the worst event to have when you feel those nerves because your legs will feel dead and you'll rack the log and your legs just feel like they won't be able to leg drive it. I've seen it a million times, which is why I would say take the lighter one, mate, and play it safe. And
then you're gonna have potentially overhead lights being in your eyes. You just have maybe the waiting periods would be longer. It's not going to be great conditions, so it's usually best to, I would say, do a conservative. But if he was close, if he already hit 310, I would say potentially. But I think this is a good plan.
If you smoked the comp weight, if you smoked it in training, then that's a little bit of a different story. But yeah, it's a tough ask. Dieting into show there's too many factors, mate, playing against you. So I wouldn't risk it personally.
All right, excellent. But we got through all the questions. So my last questions So when everything is said and done, what are you looking to achieve in the sport of strongman and coaching and life?
So I just want to be remembered. When I'm gone, I want to just be known in strongman as making an impact on how people train and how people treat the sport with more S&C application rather than just caveman-y, lifting big weights and rocks. Because the way the sport's evolving, let's face facts. I think Mitchell Hooper's one of the most clued up strongmen in the game, and he's dominating. And the way he knows about the anatomy and the body, I say he's one of the cleverest strongmen as well. And his application in training is very smart as well. And he's setting a new standard. And I think that's opening people's eyes a little bit to the fact that you do need to be a little bit smarter about your training and stuff. And this is what I've been trying to build at MST since we started. So I want to be remembered as someone who made the most impact in the scene as to leveling up the kind of coaching knowledge. I don't care about being remembered for anything as an athlete. I couldn't care less, but I want to be remembered for helping hundreds and thousands of people level up the kind of training game, especially when it comes to shoulder health, because shoulder health in strongman, if you train strongman for 10, 15 years and you do it a little bit caveman-y, everybody ends up with shoulder issues. So I'd really like to have made a big impact on the state of people's shoulders when they retire from the sport as well.
All right, so save those shoulders and do your T3s. That's the main goal.
Get the T3s.
So for Shane, I'm gonna have your Instagram in the description. I'm gonna have your YouTube in the description. I'll have your website. So if they're interested in your coaching or any of your coaching templates or other resources, it'll all be down there. Besides Instagram and YouTube, are you doing any like Discord, any Twitch, any LinkedIn?
No, I am not doing any of that stuff. I am too old to know how they work. But the YouTube, I'm going to be going ham on the YouTube soon. So subscribe to the YouTube because I'm going to make sure we get some good long form educational content out there. That's my new venture. I'm going to go a bit on the YouTube. So yeah.
Well, if you need any suggestions, maybe you can talk to Luke, not me, because they kill it. And I'm still my channel's still growing. I think I need better stuff on things, but I am coming out with shirts.
I'm asking Joe Scully. So yeah, Joe Scully's helping me.
Yeah. Perfect. But I'm coming out with some shirts. So Canby shirts coming out soon. So Tommy Lavelle and Odd Objects are putting them out there. So it should be coming out in weeks. So, and also I have 2 shirts, the Italian Stanley and the Canby shirt. Of course, I'm doing a little coaching, guys, but I'm still ramping up. If you're interested in my stuff, seminar in Bowling Green, November 9th. And then to end the show, actually, let's see. I have one more comment. Oh, great talk, guys. Hey, thanks, Joseph. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you,
All
Joe.
right, to end the show, Shane, one last piece of advice that you want to leave the listeners.
Chill the fuck out when you're doing strongman. Don't take it so serious.
You heard it here.